Si comes tienes que lavar tu plato, Firulais. Anda, enjuágalo bien. No me gruñas. A ver, con la esponja eso. Y enjuaga bien que luego deja todo jabonoso. Eso así, muy bien, aunque de malas.
Welcome to the motherfucking lady. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Stephanie Hahn ekes out a decision retaining her title despite Holly Holm's late charge. In a fight that I see a lot of people calling a robbery, Stephanie Hahn turned back a spirited effort from Holly Holm to win a narrow majority decision and retain her WBA lightweight title in front of a record-breaking hometown crowd Saturday night at El Paso County Coliseum in Texas. Hahn escaped with her title despite being outlanded by Holm 107 to just 70. Two judges scored it 96-94 for Hahn, while a third judge scored it 95-95. I know that it was a close fight, but I felt that I did enough to win, said Hahn. I wasn't surprised how she brought the fight to me because I know how hard she prepared for this. It was a rematch of their January clash, which Hahn won by UD. I'm watching both Stephanie Hahn and Holly Holm at the same time I'm watching Foster versus Fulton. And I'm looking over and thinking, is it my imagination or did Holly Holm come back better? Because it looks a lot like Holly Holm is outlanding Stephanie. It looks like Holly's winning. This was a rematch of their January clash, which Hahn won by unanimous technical decision. That fight was stopped in round 7 after an accidental clash of heads opened a cut on Hahn's forehead, but she retained her title with wide scores. The rematch picked up where the last fight left off, with Hahn on her front foot and Holm looking to counter in the opening stanza. Holm, 44, made the proper adjustments, and the fight was much closer than their initial meeting. Holm used her movement and combination punching to nearly spoil Hahn's homecoming. Holm was dejected after the defeat. A former UFC Women's Bantamweight champion, she is 1-2 since ending her 12-year absence from boxing. In June, by signing with MVP, Holm fared much better in her return bout with Hahn, but her effort wasn't enough to sway the judges. I felt like I won that fight, Holm said. I want to keep fighting if it's fair. It's disheartening when you put that kind of work in. It's just frustrating. Hahn got off to a fast start, landing her left hand and putting pressure on Holm. An accidental clash of heads in round 2 opened a cut on Hahn's right eyebrow, but it wasn't bad enough to affect the fight. Holm closed the gap in the mid-rounds, stringing together combination punches and circling away from Hahn's power hand. Holm managed the distance and became the aggressor in the fight. The change in strategy nearly paid off, but Hahn held her own during the late exchanges and maintained her early lead to retain her title. With a combat sports legend behind her, Hahn is looking towards a fight with one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in women's boxing. I want Katie Taylor next, Hahn said. I know everyone wants her, but she beat my sister Jennifer Hahn years ago, and I want to get revenge for her. Well, that's how you know Katie Taylor's still the face of women's boxing. Everybody wants to fight her. Alicia, Stephanie. Before these two, Caroline Dubois was calling her out. I know everyone wants her, but she beat my sister Jennifer Hahn years ago, and I want to get revenge for her. I came back to boxing to help my sister prepare for Katie Taylor, and it would be an honor to be her last fight. I would go to Ireland for that. You would have to. Unfortunately for Stephanie, I think she's a day late and a dollar short. I don't actually think she's in the running for Katie Taylor's final fight set to go down at Croke Park in September. Rumor has it an official announcement is imminent, and I don't expect it will be Stephanie that she fights. Was this a robbery? I believe it was, because a lot of the time, when I look over to the Hahn versus Holm fight, Holly Holm is getting off. She came back better, more coordinated. Getting off her combinations, outlanding Stephanie. That's the story that the CompuBox stats show. Now, she didn't look raggedy out there like the first time out. I've half a mind to do a rescore sometime this week where myself and members of the panel watch the fight back and score it round by round. But on the face of it, it looked like Holly Holm won. And based on the amount of people that are now calling this a robbery, I know it's not my imagination. Not a case of sour grapes either, because I picked Stephanie to win a decision. Categorically she did, so the prediction stuck. Though, if I'm honest, it looked a lot like Holly Holm won. Though, what do you expect when they're in El Paso, Texas, where Stephanie's from, in front of a hometown crowd? It wouldn't be the first time a dubious decision was turned in the Lone Star State. I don't know where Holly Holm goes from here at 44 years old. Does she keep fighting when this was her best bet to become a world champion again? Stephanie Hahn doesn't have that many professional bouts. Doesn't have the same decorated amateur background of a Caroline Dubois, or the raw punching power of an Elif Nur Turan. I like Stephanie Hahn, but she's the weakest link with a belt at 135. And if Holly couldn't beat her decisively, it's hard to imagine she's going to beat either of them. I don't know what happens with Holly after this. We'll discuss Stephanie's trajectory in another video. In men's light heavyweight news, Beterbiev vs. Bivol trilogy likely headed to Russia, says Sean Zettel. What about the WBO's order for Dimitri to fight Callum Smith? A third fight between Artur Beterbiev and Dimitri Bivol may take place in Russia rather than Saudi, according to reporter Sean Zettel, who says sources close to the situation believe plans are moving in that direction. Zettel discussed the situation after Bivol's UD win over Michael Eifert on Saturday, saying multiple people familiar with the ongoing talks expect a trilogy fight between Beterbiev and Bivol to be funded and staged in Russia rather than through Turkey El Sheikh. You'll remember a couple of months ago an offer from the IBA that Team Beterbiev said was worth even more money than Turkey was willing to put up. Who's the IBA? The IBA that used to oversee all of the amateur boxing, but in recent years lost recognition from the IOC and thus have thrown their hat in the ring of professional boxing, staging professional boxing matches, headed by Umar Kremlev. Beterbiev and Bivol will likely push through with a trilogy in Russia without Turkey's involvement, without Saudi funding. That'll be done by Umar Kremlev and the Russian Boxing Federation that runs the IBA, said Zettel. That is what is likely to be pushed through. Is Beterbiev-Bivol 3 in Russia next? The reported development emerged during a broader discussion about David Benavidez's future and why his team have been exploring alternative options at both light heavyweight and cruiser. Ever the Americentric apologist, you can tell Sean's trying to spin it to where this trilogy is the reason that David's not coming back down, when this trilogy wouldn't have been possible if you would have taken on Artur first. According to Sean Zettel, Team Benavidez believes Bivol remains its preferred target. However, if Bivol and Beterbiev move forward with a third fight, that path could be closed off for the remainder of the year. Zettel also said Jose Benavidez Sr. petitioned the WBC to make David the mandatory for cruiserweight champion Noel Mikhailian, which we've talked a lot about in recent days, giving his son another title route if the major light heavyweight fights remain unavailable. Their number 1 and number 2 options are Bivol for the title and then Beterbiev if they can't get Bivol. But if they're fighting each other, then you move on to cruiserweight for the WBC title, Zettel said while recounting discussions with Jose. Neither Beterbiev nor Bivol have officially announced plans for the trilogy bout. The two rivals split their previous meetings, with Beterbiev winning the first fight before Bivol gained revenge in their rematch. Well, this is going to be the cover story and the reason they give why David doesn't come back down, when in all actuality, once he went up, he was never going to, and I would go as far as saying it was never his intention to face either Dimitri or Artur. What makes you say that? In between the time that he beats Vosdik and he fights David Morrell, he was already eyeing a move to cruiserweight. This was before his second fight at the weight. So how could it be your intention to fight either Dimitri or Artur when you were already charting a course to cruiser? Having only just arrived at light heavy, does it sound like it was his intention to stay there long enough to fight Dimitri, to fight Artur, when just 2 fights in, he was already planning on leaving? The trilogy will not be the reason that David doesn't fight Dimitri, doesn't fight Artur. The trilogy, as it were, is not the reason he's not moving back down. Now, what it will be is the excuse that he gives. It'll be what he tells the media when he knows he was always planning on moving up to cruiser without fighting them, and once he moved up, he was never planning on coming back down. Over to the trilogy. Artur Beterbiev is running out of time to shake off the cobwebs and the ring rust because he hasn't fought since their second meeting, where Dmitry was in action this past Saturday, shaking off his ring rust and his cobwebs with Michael Eifert. Artur has yet to schedule another fight, and he's had ample opportunity to fight a jobber, fight some ham and egger. He was supposed to make an appearance on the undercard of Benavidez versus Yard, but according to Jean Zattel, he was pulled from the show based on a cease and desist letter sent to Turkey by Top Rank. Remember that Artur Beterbiev was still under contract with Top Rank at the time. Now that contract is said to have since expired, making Artur Beterbiev a free agent. In between now and the time they put a Bivol fight together, the IBA ought to get him a fight. Currently, the IBA have the upcoming Murat Gassiev versus Tony Yoka fight that they're doing over the summer months. If they can get Artur a slot on that undercard, nobody major, nobody dangerous, just a jobber for him to pounce on en route to the Bivol trilogy, they need to do that. Post-haste. That's their show. Put it in the co-main event. Let Artur shake off the cobwebs because I really don't like his chances in a trilogy, having not fought in well over a year's time, actually closer to 2. If they do the trilogy with Dmitry in the fall or winter, it'll be closer to 2 years from Artur's last fight. The trilogy happening in Russia would put it on somewhat neutral terrain since they're both Russian nationals, but I get the impression that Artur is in a bit better with the IBA than Dmitry is. The IBA are rumored to be paying the fighters $20 million apiece to do the trilogy. You heard that right. That's more money than Turkey was willing to put up for it. That's what Artur Beterbiev's team said about the offer from the IBA. And I remember the video that Umar Kremlev uploaded to his social media, FaceTiming Artur Beterbiev and not Dmitry Bivol. It just gives me the impression that maybe Artur has more of a rapport with the IBA than Dmitry does, and it would be the IBA promoting the show, so that matters to some extent. Dmitry is still affiliated with Matchroom. That's why Frank Smith was in attendance for his fight this past weekend. He was there. I hardly think he would have flown all the way out to Russia for what was a glorified tune-up fight for Dmitry if Dmitry had no ties to Matchroom, so he's still tied to the promotion. Does he win the trilogy? I'm leaning towards him to win it. I mean, he came back better in the second fight. To a lot of people, he should have won the first one. He's the younger man, and he's actually fought in the last 12 months, which is more than we can say for Artur. Time is not on his side. I believe he's close to 40 if he's not there already. When they had their rematch, Artur didn't change much from the first fight into the second. His approach, it was more or less the same, which is what you expect from a pressure fighter. Even a high-level one like Artur. Pressure fighters really don't change much from one fight to the next. Because the focus is pressure. They're going to apply it. That much you already know. It was Dmitry that adjusted. It was Dmitry that came back better, making the decision to come forward more and put more punches together, spend less time on your bike, more time letting punches go. It made the difference on the judges' scorecards in the second fight. Overall, I do view Dmitry as being more adaptable than Artur. Dmitry can fight a safety-first fight off the back foot, but when he needs to, he can show some aggression, come forward, throw combinations when he needs to. He's the more versatile fighter of the two, and it helps a great deal that he's also the younger, more active fighter of the two. So at this time, I am leaning towards him to win the trilogy. Men's heavyweight news, Anthony Joshua promises to produce a clinical display versus Prenga. Another stoppage win would help kickstart what the two-time unified heavyweight champion described as a massive year for his world title aspirations. Little-known Albanian puncher Christian Prenga has been deemed the final hurdle before a long-awaited Tyson Fury showdown for AJ, who hears all of the noise. He would have heard news of Team Prenga warning Joshua's handlers about an impending upset on July 25th. Rather than grow agitated, he welcomed an intensity change as time wears down before a must-win matchup. There were a series of names floated for Joshua's return. Having not boxed a heavyweight since his fifth-round knockout loss to Daniel Dubois in September of 2024, many were unimpressed upon hearing Prenga, 20-1 with 20 knockouts, was handed the assignment. A club fighter known mostly on the New Jersey scene stateside, even the Albanian was surprised. To be be honest, when my manager called me and said, "You're gonna fight AJ," I didn't believe it, but I said, "Let's go. It's my time now," Prenga said at the launch.
If it were actually the Albanian's time, then they wouldn't have picked him. The reason they picked him is he's a low-level club fighter with a mostly winning record. Only 1 recorded loss and 20 wins.
But he's got no experience at world level. He's never been in there with anyone semblant of an Anthony Joshua.
I respect him. He's a great fighter, and I watched him from the first fight, his debut. I grew up with him. Now it's my time. I train hard, more than ever, feel great, ready, and I think I'll shock the world,
said Prenga. They just dig a grave. Digging deeper and deeper, Joshua replied on the days in response. I'll do what I need to do. I respect him and every opponent, but when I look at myself, I know what I'm gonna do and I'll deliver. All the talk is cheap. We will see. This is my division. I belong here. I don't do this as a joke. This is what I'm good at. It's not about him, it's about me.
That might seem somewhat self-centered from what is a normally humble Anthony Joshua, but he's actually right. It's not about the Albanian. It's not about Prenga. It's about AJ.
It's about getting him active again. It's not even about this fight. It's about another. It's about Tyson Fury. He then asked Prenga to bring his best and show the 36-year-old no respect come fight night, as he'll be doing the same after doing some early film study on another opponent pledging a career best performance. Prenga might be a soft touch on paper, but the former 2-time European kickboxing champion transitioned into the sport late with little amateur experience and has much to gain from exceeding expectations. Rico Verhoeven did exactly the same against Joshua's former foe turned friend, Alexander Usyk, and the jeopardy is now heightened. This is my job. I've got an opportunity to work, a chance to improve. I'm really focusing on improving my talent and skill, Joshua said. This training camp isn't about getting fit, strong. I really want to improve my boxing IQ and show how good I am, because when I do that, I put on clinical performances. When asked about what he's been improving from, immersing himself in the life with Team Usyk, Joshua talked about his conditioning and enhanced defensive skills. Boxing fitness, IQ, defense, I understand it, and can really read punches again. My eyes are fully locked in on my focus. I can see the punches and read the opponent really well. My mind is like that. Tunnel vision. Isn't focused on too much other stuff.
It feels like we've already been here so many times with Anthony, in the midst of a big rebuild and somebody new in the corner.
Of course, I'm curious to see what Team Usyk may have added to Anthony Joshua's repertoire. What wrinkles can he actually employ and bring to a Tyson Fury fight? I think we're all curious to see that.
But it is the equivalent of going to a different movie that has the same plot as another. We're curious to see if Anthony can pick himself up, dust himself off, get back on the saddle, and get back in the winner's bracket. We've done that a good amount of times now.
In all likelihood, he's going to beat Prenga. It's just a question of how. And what do we learn about Anthony in the process? I believe he will make it to the Tyson Fury fight.
Oh yeah, he's gonna beat this guy.
But it's just one fight and 2 camps enough ahead of a Fury showdown to make a tangible difference in Anthony's methodology.
If anybody knows anything about beating Tyson Fury, it is Team Usyk, but at the same time, Anthony strikes me as a guy who tends to overthink things.
Spend a lot of time in his own head, which could in effect paralyze him.
On one end, it's encouraging that he still aspires to learn and grow and change. But on the other end, as experienced as he already is, you get the sense he should be more settled into himself.
So we'll see what happens.